This is Batgirl, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to the Cinema Geeks podcast as we continue our retrospective of Kevin Smith. Today we will be discussing that holiday classic, Jersey Girl. We've been going through the career of Kevin Smith, starting with his very first film, Clerks, working our way through his career. Now we're up to the notorious Jersey Girl. We're finally here. Joining me throughout this adventure, my fellow Cinema Geeks have been joining me, starting with, of course, Hard Candy Mandy. How's it going?
Hey guys.
Kevin Optimus Solo.
How's it going?
And last but not least, Matt Fridley Sant.
Parents just don't understand, guys.
They just don't, no.
Neither does Ben Affleck.
Yeah, very true. So yes, we've been going through the career of Kevin Smith. We've been talking about all his films, what we've liked and not liked, and now we've made it our way to Jersey Girl. When this was a first-time watch for me, and I think a few of us, so I'm kind of interested to see, because this obviously had a lot of press about it during the time for a lot of different reasons, and I think it's notoriously people claiming to be Kevin Smith's worst film, I think even Kevin Smith says that. So I was interested in how that affected our viewpoint of the movie going in and after we watched it. So Amanda, let's start with you. What was your overall opinion of Jersey Girl?
I liked it. I'd seen it before. This definitely wasn't a first time watch, but I did not realize that this was a Kevin Smith movie when I saw it the first time. Because it just doesn't feel like the others. It's got its own, it's like his own little genre within what he's been doing already. Like, it's not something that we've gotten exactly from him before, I don't think. But it still has some things that, after you know that it's a Kevin Smith film, then I think I can pick them out easier, like some of his humor and some things that he thinks, like the heavy sex stuff, like when she's, interviewing and, like, researching, like, is it the masturbation or porn rentals or something like that. Like, they get right into it when it comes to the sex stuff. I feel like that's very Kevin Smith. But as far as much heart as this had in it, I think it's way beyond what we've gotten so far.
Interesting. Starting off positive, Kevin, do you continue that, or what were your thoughts of Jersey Girl?
Well, I would echo one thing that Amanda said for sure, which is that it doesn't feel like a Kevin Smith film. Like, you could show this to a lot of people and then show, the other films that we've reviewed so far, and I don't think a lot of people would say, yeah, those are connected or made by the same person. So I think it's missing a lot of the Kevin Smith aspects that we're kind of used to or that we've discussed in some of the other previous films. I think it does sneak in a couple parts, which we might be able to get into a little bit later. I think there's, a couple sequences or settings where you see a little bit of it, but I don't think if you didn't have the knowledge already that he was doing this, that you would be able to pick it out as like a, characteristics of a Kevin Smith film. That being said, for me, it's just kind of the standard romantic comedy with what they usually try to put a little twist in there some way, shape, or form, like whether it be the actual coincidences or the sequences that it's happening or something about the setup is usually somewhat trying to be unique, but if you take that away, it turns into what could be, I don't know, romantic comedy is the right word, I guess, I don't know, because there's a little bit of drama there's a little bit of emotional impact as well, so, but I don't know if it really does much to separate itself from other films in its genre, so to speak, so I'm kind of mixed on this one.
Interesting. Matt, how about you? I know you came in as probably the biggest Kevin Smith fan, so, and I know a lot of Kevin Smith fans tend to not like this movie, as Amanda mentioned. A lot of people feel like it's very different for him. So what was your overall viewpoint of Jersey Girl?
Man, this is, I don't know. If I'm not going for, like, an adventurous fantasy or sci-fi movie, like, this is exactly the type of movie I want. Like, I want this, like, drama, comedy, romance plot, like this really is right in my wheelhouse, and I think the fact that Kevin Smith does it, he gets a little extra out of me, just like referencing Star Wars and Batman, just like in a way that feels natural, like that I would do in my real life. Like it doesn't belabor the point like sometimes happens in Clerks and stuff. Like so it's got some of those Kevin Smith elements without being just a stoner flick.
Interesting. I gotta say, like, going into this, I thought, if you asked me, like, thinking of just a reputation that we would start off a lot more negative about Jersey Girl, but I went into this knowing all about the stuff I was talking about, seeing many Kevin Smith conversations and seeing him put this down, and just knowing that it has this reputation, and it's one of the reasons I've stayed away from it for so long. And watching it, I think I walked away wondering, like, I don't understand where all this gigantic hate is coming from, or like why it is viewed so poorly compared to everything else that he's done or of the time. Like, would I call it a great movie? By no stretch of the imagination. It is, it's standard affair for sure, but I guess it to me seems like a movie that suffered from a lot of just the press at the time. I think, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez they were huge in the tabloids at that moment in time. And it seemed like a lot of that seeped into, so I read some of the reviews at the time, and they were just like vicious towards this movie. And perhaps it's a little sanctimonious. It's, a little schmaltzy here and there. But I thought, overall, like, this is, Kevin Smith has his mom's favorite movie of his, and I could get that. Like, this is a Kevin Smith movie I could show my mom, and I never thought I'd be able to say that. But, yeah, I thought overall, this was perfectly adequate. A little bit unremarkable, but I thought there were parts of it that I ended up really liking. So, Mandy, you mentioned, I know, Mandy, you've had different feelings towards some of the Kevin Smith movies. Some of them you liked, you didn't like. Was it because you had that, like Kevin Smith's overall style was a little bit muted, that you felt like this one worked more for you than some of the other movies?
I just felt like I could connect to it a lot more, and that I could get behind what was happening, and like I could feel the emotions of the characters, so like I could connect more with this. Like it was more real people that I could see myself being, any one of these people.
Yeah, I could see that. I think certainly it's interesting because you say that and you think about like the reaction a lot of people have to Clerks, and a lot of the community connects with that because they speak the same language. But I could see similar to that with Jersey Girl, and I know, Kevin, you mentioned that there were certain aspects where you felt like, hey, you can see Kevin Smith sneaking in there. What were some of those moments that you felt that this did kind of feel like Kevin Smith had more of a hand in it than some of the other moments?
Oh, I think it mainly, almost 100% revolves around the character of Maya Harding, played by Liv Tyler. Like, I think if you take Liv Tyler out of this movie, which wouldn't make any sense because the whole story's, she's a major part of that. But like, if you take that aspects out, like, I don't think you're left with anything Kevin Smith. I think in the rest of the movie, for me, it doesn't seem like she represents a lot of stuff, whether it's her as a character, the dialogue that's involved in her sequences, or even just like from a physical standpoint, the fact that she works at a video store. Like, there's just aspects of that just scream Kevin Smith and kind of harken back to some of his other films. So I mean, I think right from the beginning, where you're introduced to her character, and then some of the conversations she has with Ben Affleck's character, because she kind of represents that person that's breaking down the walls of different characters to kind of just tell it how it is, and not have those restraints that a lot of us might have in conversations with people we don't know, or even sometimes with people that we do know. So that kind of got into more of those discussion pieces that we've seen, and dialogue heavy aspects that we've seen in some of the other films. So I think it was a lot revolving around her. I think you might be able to sense a little of it with George Carlin's character, as well as his buddies. You might get a little of it from that, but for me, it's a lot to do with Liv Tyler. Like, that's where I felt like, okay, this is a Kevin Smith film, and I recognize some of these things that were going on.
Man, do you agree with that? Do you feel like Liv Tyler's character was like akin to, thinking of, the characters in Chasing Amy, or some of the other females that he's created in his films?
You do see elements like she's a lot like the female character from Mallrats, the 16-year-old who's writing a term paper, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a very similar concept there. And there are all these very Kevin Smith through elements, like The movie store is always a big thing because that was a huge thing in his childhood. Like it's like I mentioned earlier, the Batman and Star Wars references that you see. Like it does have a lot of little Kevin Smith elements, even if it doesn't have any like weed at all in this whole movie, right?
I don't think so.
No, maybe it would now because I think this was before he started smoking. So maybe if he made Jersey Girl 2, which is, hey, there's worse things. But I know when he set off to make this, like Ben Affleck was trying to get him to like make something that was like Chasing Amy again, along those lines that kind of got at something different than some of his other movies. And I can see where some of those attempts are being made with this, like especially with Ben Affleck's character, the struggles he's going through, trying to get him to connect to this, young daughter and how he's kind of conflicted, and the fact that but I guess where kind of going back to Kevin's point, I almost felt like he didn't go as far as with Jersey Girl as he did with Chasing Amy. Thinking of like the sequence in which he's finally having that last major breakdown when he's conflicted between going to the play for his daughter or going to this interview, and like he lashes out, and like I thought like that was one of the moments where you felt like this went a different place than you would for a typical movie of this nature. But other than that, I mean, I thought like some of the George Carlin stuff was overall good, and those moments worked. But I guess I felt it's outside of that specific sequence and some of the other bits and pieces, it felt a little bit more conventional,
right,
than something like Chasing Amy.
Yeah, I agree too, and also obviously is dealing with a few more concepts that we haven't seen explored in the other ones, because for the most part, most of these films have been younger individuals dealing with things you would at a more immature age or more of a developmental stage in your life, where they're at a job, or they're dealing with single guys talking about girls or this, that, and the other. Whereas this one, you have a definite structure of a family, you have a child involved, you have parents involved. So it's some of those that like we don't get the other sides. Like most of his films have been just one age bracket, it seems like, and you don't deal much with people's parents or people's kids or things of that nature. So I think just from a structure standpoint, you have like a different element that we're not used to seeing in a Kevin Smith film. So it's weird because it's like, I feel like someone else does this without any of those aspects, and it is more of a conventional film. But then when Kevin Smith does it, because he's never done anything, it doesn't feel conventional for him, yet it's somewhat conventional from, I guess, a setting, story, plot and that type of stuff. So it's like a weird thing when you're watching it, I think, kind of balancing those things out, because it's both conventional as a movie, but unconventional for the director, and it's weird.
It kind of reminded me of something of like Jay and Silent Strike Back, in the way where that felt like it was akin to other movies of like the Cannonball Run era, where this was I don't even know what genre. Like you said, I don't think romantic comedy would be within that realm. But like there are some things where I'm like, okay, there's Kevin Smith trying to be a little bit different, like the fact that she. The play that she was doing was from, can't think of the Demon Barber. Sweeney Todd, which was, pretty cool. And I think at that time, I mean, that was well before the Sweeney Todd movie came out. And I think, getting a little bit of niche culture before, I mean, I guess it's not that niche because it was a Broadway play, but.
Right.
But I thought that was a funny sequence, and how they utilized that. Like that was, I thought, an example of him trying to do, push it envelope a little bit, even if he was maybe placing himself in more of a box. But speaking of Jersey Girl, the relationship of Ben Affleck and that of his daughter, played by Raquel Castro, who was, I think, 10 at the time when this was come out, or around that age. How did we feel that that worked, and how she was as a child actress? Like, was she believable? Was the relationship that the film was built on, did that work for you all?
I think she was super cute, and I think that she worked really well with Ben Affleck and George Carlin. Like, you can tell that she had some good chemistry, and you believe the relationship she had with everybody.
I agree with Amanda. I think she worked well. And obviously it's part of Ben Affleck's character, but you're talking about the relationship between the two. I mean, good God, is that guy just a terrible dad in the first half of this film?
Yeah, I hated him.
Like, it's weird because, and obviously that's unintentional, and we're supposed to think that and see that, but like, it's just weird to, and I'm obviously not a parent, never been a parent, so I can't relate, but the typical thing you hear is, when that child comes into that parent's life, even if they were kind of a douchebag up until that point, or even if they were someone that kind of put work first, like a switch goes off, it seems like traditionally you hear that, like, all of a sudden their world changes, and it's like, why is that not happening with Ben Affleck's character in the first half of this film? So that was like weird to like see a different take on that. But I think, as we go through, the relationship between him and his daughters is good. But I think I really appreciated the child performance almost even more than Ben Affleck's performance, because she interacts with a lot of different individuals, and it seemed like all of them worked.
What about you, Matt? What do you think about it?
I think that, I mean, the child performance was way above average. Like you even asked the question, and my immediate thought was, oh yeah, she was acting. Like, she did a real good job. Like, I usually don't give it up for child performers. It's seems like once in a blue moon you get one that's worth mentioning, and I gotta say, like, I didn't find any fault. I never got taken out or anything.
Yeah, I thought she was quite good, and I thought they had a good back and forth, and she had some of the funnier moments, and when the script called her to be a little bit more dramatic, I think she pulled it off, which is clearly difficult, and that's something I think on a directing standpoint you do have to give Kevin Smith kudos for, because it is challenging to direct kids and get the right kid for the right role, and I thought they did that, and I thought even like her interaction with Liv Tyler worked really well, and it probably had like my favorite scene or back-to-back scenes where you the juxtaposition of conversation between him having it with Ben Affleck talking to her about after he catches her with that young boy playing I'll show you yours and you show me mine, and then flipping back when she catches him. So I thought that was that was like one of the best like jokes Kevin Smith did that had no vulgarity in it.
Yeah,
like, which so showing that he can be clean and funny at the same time.
I also liked the whole running theme with the Will Smith aspect of the film. I thought that was subtle yet funny, and an interesting way to do that. I thought it led to some interesting sequences, obviously at the beginning where Ben Affleck's finally having his meltdown, but then also kind of a pretty cool scene between them as they're sitting in the waiting room of that office too. So I kind of liked that aspect of it, even though it had nothing to do with what you're asking me about.
To speak to that, did anyone else know that Will Smith had 3 kids? I only knew about Jaden and Willow. Like, I actually learned that he had an additional son through this movie. Son, daughter?
Yeah, he's got another kid. I couldn't tell you what their name is.
Nor could I.
I knew he had one that was older, but it was from I think it's like from a different person, like not from, but is like I think he was like his oldest kid. I don't know why I know. That's because my wife watches his YouTube channel, and I think that's the only reason I know.
Yeah, the other one's name is Trey. And,
Trey.
He apparently does not get a Wikipedia page because Jaden and Willow both have one, but Trey does not.
So he hasn't done anything.
Well, I mean...
Wow.
Wow.
Where's your Wikipedia page, Amanda?
Maybe in pop culture.
I mean, let me get on that.
Yeah. When we did talk about Ben Affleck, and I know, like, when I was looking at some of the reviews that were very, like I said, very nasty towards his movie, he was a big lightning rod for that, and his performance, many people, especially some of the more heavy lifting scenes, like when he finally has this breakdown, decides to become a dad, or some of the other moments. How did we feel Ben Affleck worked with this on our own? What did you think of his performance overall?
I think he was solid. I believed it. I believed his struggle. I believed his pain. And as much as I wanted to punch him in the freaking throat for being an awful person in the beginning, I think he, for the most part, got it together and did what he had to do to be a dad and a provider. And I think he learned some good lessons.
I don't know. Like, I'm a little... I don't know if it's just because he's up against someone like George Carlin or even Liv Tyler, who I think at the time was maybe a little bit more of a polished, or not a polished, but a higher caliber actor as he was. But I don't know, he came across like it's still kind of that. This was 2004, so I feel like it shouldn't be, but I don't know. I felt like it was a little rough for him around the edges. I don't think it was anything that he deserved to be like taken a task for or anything like that. But so far, the Ben Affleck scenes and movies that he's appeared in the Kevin Smith universe, I guess, or the View Askew, or however you say it, I don't think would make Ben Affleck's highlight reel of his career so far. But maybe that's being a little overly harsh.
Interesting. Matt, what about you?
Like, I don't have any complaints. I enjoy Ben Affleck, probably particularly in Kevin Smith movies. Like, when everyone was complaining about him as the Batman, that was my very first thing I said was, like, have you seen him in the Kevin Smith movies? Because, like, he could definitely act. Like, I get that you don't like, I don't know, Good Will Hunting or whatever. So, like, I thought he was on par with what I expect from Ben Affleck. I didn't have any complaints.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there are parts that I thought did work. Like, I actually thought the sequence where he's breaking down was one of the better examples of it. But I don't know if I ever felt like him and Liv Tyler had a lot of chemistry. That's not really a performance per se, and part of that was just was purposeful, based upon the film. But yeah, I don't think this is. I think I liked him more in something like Jason Amy, and then again that could be more so the character than the actual performance itself. But I don't think it's awful by any means, like I saw people indicating. And yeah, there are some moments where he is emoting to a great degree, but I felt, considering the situation, it was purposeful.
It's also an interesting period in Ben Affleck's filmography, if you kind of go through it, because he kind of was in like a little bit of a, I don't know, I would say he's almost in like a dead period of his career from, he had done some things, been in like Pearl Harbor, which is a terrible movie, but he wasn't awful in it. And obviously a lot of things earlier on, Armageddon and some of the other Kevin Smith stuff. But then this is like a 5-year period where I don't think he did a single film that was anything to write home about. I mean, this is when Geely, or however you say that one was, Paycheck, Elektra, Jersey Girl, there was probably about 4 or 5 other films that I haven't seen in this time period, so I guess I can't speak for those, but it was kind of a rough time before he got kind of going back with it, with like stuff like Gone Baby Gone and obviously more recently The Town and Argo and some of that stuff. So it was kind of an interesting point in his career where he had a lot of success early on, and this was kind of like, I don't know, his sophomore slump, so to speak. It was like a little middle period where it seemed a little dead for him.
Yeah, I think. I know, and it's interesting because he specifically, like, I think he was a person really spearheading the Kevin Smith to write something like this, and I wonder if it, like, that slump led him to, like, think, okay, let me get behind the camera and make some movies, and with Gone Baby Gone and Argo and The Town. But yeah, I think, and like I said, I think this was when his whole tabloid life was like huge, right. and I think that kind of overtook his actual acting career.
Yeah, I think so too.
But it's one thing we talked a little bit about the supporting cast, but I did think it was pretty strong. Like George Carlin and like his little friend group. I thought they had some of the better comic relief, and I thought as performance wise, like George Carlin, I thought he would just be like a guy who came in, said some funny lines, but he actually had some legitimate like acting moments, and I was like, wow, like Carlin has some ability that I thought like his character ended up being one of the better parts of the film.
Yeah, I agree. I think Stephen Root and George Carlin. I think it was Stephen Root, and I can't remember who the third guy was actor wise, but I thought those three were definitely a good part of the supporting cast. I also really like I'm going to say her name wrong, but Apatham Murkison, who played the doctor. I've liked her in a lot of other stuff, and I was somewhat shocked at first because there's a sequence where she appears, and she's a fairly well-known actress especially during this time, and like I'm like, why did they have her in that role that was so minor and so inconsequential? But then obviously she comes back later on and has a bigger role in the film. So I was like, oh, okay, now it makes sense, because I was so confused why that wasn't just a nobody that was in that role at first. But yeah, I think there's a lot of decent supporting cast here.
Yeah. But anyone have anything else? Any other elements, points people wanted to bring up?
Amanda?
I don't think so.
No, I'm good.
Matt, was there anything else you wanted to talk about that we didn't mention?
Oh man, I feel like there had to be something, but I can't think of what it was. I think that was this movie truly panned? I thought
Yeah.
I don't know. I know a lot of people say negative things, but it's like one of his better, as far as if you just look at the box office numbers, it's done better than most of his movies. It's like of the ones he's written, it's number 4. Of the ones he's directed, it's number 5 because there's one that he didn't direct or didn't write. But it's a decent movie. It's fine. It doesn't break any boundaries. But for some reason, it has an exorbitant budget that would have been nearly impossible for a film like this to overcome.
Yeah, it only made $1 million more than its budget, and it was nominated for 3 Razzie Awards. Not that anybody cares about Razzies, but worst actor, worst actress, worst on-screen couple. But it's not terrible on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, it has a 41%, which is not great, but it's not it's not terrible.
But what's a little odd too is it is a 48% audience score, which is usually with Kevin Smith movies. Even when they usually have a decent he's usually in the 80s when it comes to the audience. Dogma, Clerks, they're Mallrats. Those are when it comes to the fan reaction are usually a lot higher. But Jersey Girl, it seems it wasn't it wasn't. I think something some movies we'll get to Tusk probably was panned a lot more. But when I was doing research and looking at the rankings of a lot of Kevin Smith movies, most had it listed at the bottom of his career, or just reading some of the reviews of the time were pretty harsh on it. So I mean, there were some people that were, I think, positive, we overall were, but I think, I mentioned, it just seemed like people were sick of the Ben-Hur thing of the time, and they let that maybe my guessing let that impact their overall review of the movie.
Yeah, I think Dan hit it on the head. I think it's a product of its time and when it came out, because this is right when they were at the height of their tabloid stuff. This is when they broke up. I think that even affected some of the sequences in the movie because they had split up and they weren't able to get Jennifer Lopez to do some parts. I don't know the ins and outs of it. Somebody else probably has more knowledge of that. But so I think that's that, and coming off the heels of Geely or whatever you call it, which got even worse reviews, obviously didn't help its situation. I think if that movie had come out in a few years prior, a few years after, it might not have got panned quite as much.
And I think some people hoped it would have been the Heights of Chasing Amy or something like that.
Right.
It didn't.
It could have been something where we see a lot with movie reviews and critics especially, where if it's not the movie they expect it to be, they end up scoring it negative, which doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad movie. It just might not have been what they thought they were walking into.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of glad we just did this retrospective, because now I have a much more of appreciation for this film. Like I said, it's not one I would it's call high art, but I thought it was effective for what it was going for. But all right, well, let's go around and give our final thoughts and overall grade for Jersey Girl. Amanda, let's start with you.
I don't agree with any of the hate. I enjoyed it. It was a good movie. As heartbreaking as it is, it's got some really warm moments, and like I said, it's Ben Affleck learned some good lessons, and it's a good journey to go on. So I enjoyed it. I'm gonna give it a 8.5.
Wow, is that the highest score you've given Kevin Smith movies so far?
I mean, I think so.
Interesting. Man, it's going to be fun when we finally get to ranking these. That's interesting. Kevin, how about you?
I think what works for this film is I think it has a good balance of different types of moments, because you got a little bit of emotional impact. You have a little bit of comedy. I think the right amount of comedy sprinkled in. I think you have some decent acting performances here and there. You have some decent dialogue. So I mean, it has a little of a lot of different things. But for me, it's I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it has much that's going to separate itself from just a lot of other films that would kind of fall on that same yoke. I think I do appreciate the Kevin Smith aspects that are there. So for that, I think I'll land at a 6 out of 10 for me.
All right, Matt, how about yourself?
I like it. Like I wish I'd seen it before. I tried to see it a couple of years ago, but I couldn't find a place. I couldn't find a place to get it for cheap. Like all of the streaming services were only buy, not rent. Which I imagine is because of how poorly rated it is. Which I don't think it deserves. I don't think it's as good as Chasing Amy. I do like it. I like the Kevin Smith elements to it, even if it's not a total stoner flick. I think I actually like this and Chasing Amy more than most of his work, like, or at least this genre of Kevin Smith film more than the stoner flick. But it's also not the best. So like, I want to say 8.
All right, wow, and yeah, like I enjoy George's thing. Like again, a big part of that was expectations going in. That's just waiting for like, okay, where is all this awfulness supposed to occur? And I walked away thinking, and I mean this as a compliment. Like this is like the perfect airplane movie. Like it's one you can like watch with a group of people that you don't know and feel comfortable about. It has some funny moments. It has some emotional moments, especially ones that would be heightened if you're a few miles high in the sky. But I walked away happy and enjoying it, and I was not expecting it. And like I agree with Matt. I don't think it's to the Kevin Smith level of like something like Chasing Amy, and I don't think it lacks maybe the originality of some of the other Kevin Smith projects that maybe hold it back a little bit. But I think for a straightforward romantic-esque comedy that has a pretty solid father-daughter story, I enjoyed it. I maybe at the time, being a teenager when it came out, I probably would have hated it. But as a more mature adult, I think I like it a little bit more. I don't know. But I'll give it an overall 6 out of 10. Actually, no, I wouldn't be a teenager. I would have been, maybe, no, I guess I would be. I don't even know. Time's hard. Math is hard. This come out 2004. So I would, I'd still be a teenager.
That works.
No, I wouldn't be. I would be.
I was a teenager.
I don't know how to do math.
You guys are just leaving the teenage years, right?
No, I was like, I didn't graduate high school until 2006.
Oh, okay.
No, I'd be 19. I would have been 19.
Youngin.
20. 19, 20 when this came out. So I was my late teens.
There you go.
But anyways, next movie coming up, we're actually going to go back to where it all began with the View Askew universe and Clerks 2, which is another Kevin Smith film that I have not watched in its entirety. Have any of you watched Clerks 2 yet?
Yes.
This will be a first-time watch for me.
I've seen it.
Interesting. Matt, how about you?
I've seen it a number of times.
Okay. And yeah, I think that is, if I'm looking correctly, that's the last View Askew universe movie as of right now, I think. I don't know if Yogo Herzer's or Tusk exists in that same universe, but I know Cop Out and I don't know. Anyways, that's not important. But that'll be the next movie we cover in Kevin Smith. We're actually going through his career quite quickly. I think quicker than Miyazaki. Helps when you don't have 30 movies to talk about. But all right. Well, if people wanted to get in touch with all of us on Twitter, how can they do that? Amanda, what is your Twitter name?
You can find me on Twitter at HardCandyMandy. Eyes, no eyes.
Kevin?
You can find me at Optimus Solo, and newsflash, apparently I am now a nice guy on Twitter, so you can look me up there and interact with me.
Oh, so you stopped tweeting. And Matt?
At Fridley Cent.
And I am at Revolt, and the podcast Cinema Geeks is at Cinema Geekcast as well. If you want, you can leave a comment to the episode post at Geekcast Radio. Go to iTunes, give us a review. Really appreciate that. Also, I think you still have the chance to win all the video game movies from Kevin. So there's that.
Might be your last chance.
So you don't want to miss out on that, because who else is going to watch Postal, right? Is that one you bought? I don't remember that one.
I don't remember what's in that. I'll have to go review the 6-pack that is up for grabs. But we do have people in there, so if you want to get in that contest, you have very limited time, so go do it now. And if you have been waiting until it's over to leave us a review, that time is about to approach as well.
Yeah. So we'll be getting done with the video game podcast relatively soon. We have some other things planned. After that, you'll get the opportunity to maybe vote on what our next marathon would be. Hopefully movies that are good, because that would be nice. But all right. Well, this ended up being a lot more positive than I thought going in. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing people's reaction to that. I think we were more positive about this than Jane Slight and Silent Bob Strike Back, which is interesting. We'll see. Alrighty. Well, that'll be it for this week. Join us next time as we continue our Kevin Smith retrospective as we discuss Clerks 2. Until then, thanks for listening.